Hello and welcome to the Bearded Mystic Podcast, and I'm your host Rahul Len Singh. Thank you for taking out the time today to either watch or listen to this podcast episode. Today, we're going to talk about that whole Zelensky meeting at the White House when he met the convicted felon, the dictator Wannabe, and his little companion, little JD, and it was really a mess. And I was really shocked at some of the responses I saw from some friends who kind of sided with the convicted felon on this. And let's be honest, there's a few facts that were kind of ignored. One, Zelensky didn't start the war, it was Putin. Two, Zelensky has thanked America on numerous occasions, but little JD felt that Zelensky never did, and that's incorrect. But maybe JD was not happy with the eyeliner he purchased that day. And how do we deal with this from a non-dual perspective, apart from obviously the minor jokes I've kind of said there? In terms of the world stage, when you're seeing this type of misinformation, and we've not, like, for example, America's not given $350 billion in aid to Ukraine. It's a lot less than that, and whatever we have given, it's for food, and it's for making sure that people can rebuild their lives, and that is not a bad thing. That's a basic level of humanity. We're not, none of that is going into Zelensky's pocket, so I don't know what is being implied there. Mind you that there's nothing that you can trust in the current administration with the convicted felon, because any act he's going to do will somehow find its way into being a crime of some sort. I'm sure of it. Now, but how do we deal with this from a non-dual perspective? Because we see this conflict being played out. We see lies being played out. How do we cope with that? How do we see this? Well, first of all, the non-dual perspective will always say, before we even get to the oneness aspect, let's actually look at the facts. So, number one thing will always be fact-finding. Yeah, no matter what you do, you have to find the facts from an unbiased source. And in this administration, it's rather easy. Basically, whoever the current administration doesn't like in terms of media, they're the ones to trust. So the Associated Press, they're the ones to trust, because wherever there's facts, they don't like it. So the fortunate thing is here that things are a lot easier to notice. So number one thing, find your facts. Number two, we also have to understand that the convicted felon is still a human being. His administration are still human beings. Zelensky is also a human being. And that type of conflict that was played out wasn't the right one, because this can lead to catastrophic events for the future. Thankfully, Europe stood up and did not allow the convicted felon to bully them. Zelensky didn't allow himself to be bullied, and despite the disgusting display of arrogance by the convicted felon and the eyeliner VP. And then little Marco Rubio did nothing and just sat there kind of staring into the wall. Some reporter who I believe is actually in relationship with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is honestly the most the silliest person to ever be put into Congress, into the House of Representatives, and she's just down the road from me in Cumming, Georgia. And she, her, I think the person that she's dating or with, he asked a question of why Zelensky wasn't wearing a suit. The real president, Elon Musk, he doesn't wear a suit. Only when he's meeting maybe some other dictator. But when he was meeting the cabinet, he wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a cap. If Zelensky wears the clothes that he wears, he wore the same clothes when he met King Charles. You don't see King Charles being upset about what was being worn. And this tells you when you have people who are comfortable with who they are and those people that aren't comfortable with who they are. Zelensky is a true masculine figure. If you think about it, he's defending his country. He's had several assassination attempts. And still, he is strong. And still, he's got his mind was still composed. And mind you, while he's in that meeting, English is not his native language. And yet he still knew how to respond. He asked one question to JD. And he asked JD, have you ever been to Ukraine? And JD was like, oh, I've seen videos. That tells you everything. And I asked this question to all those people that were so upset with Biden and Harris. Imagine if Biden and Harris did such a display. Would you let them go with that? You wouldn't. And the fact that the American public is still rather nonchalant about it, even though there's people who support Trump have not opened their eyes to see that this is a lack of diplomacy from the convicted felon, is disgusting. And so, yes, how are we meant to even have love in this situation? But we have to. Because at the end of the day, it's that one consciousness playing out. But our discernment tells us that these characters, these whirlpools of consciousness are destructive. And therefore, if they're destructive, we need to do something about it. So in the long run, we see that the effect of what he's done, of allowing Russia to come back into, or shall we say Putin, to come back into the Oval Office. Mind you, it's the Oval Office that he's coming back into. It's not the other way round, that he's coming back to the world stage. No, he's coming into the Oval Office and dictating American policy. Literally, he's done that. He's dictated to Trump, to the convicted felon, of what he wants in terms of the situation between Ukraine and Russia. Now, this will cause repercussions we will not anticipate until the next few months to see how this plays out. We should not be asking anything from Ukraine, by the way, back. That's this is what Sri Krishna meant by when society degrades itself. This is degradation of society on a mass scale. If you want to say, like, this is setting up the scene for an actual Mahabharata, for an actual big battle. So this situation that happened shows that there's only going to be harm from this. And the harm is going to be catastrophic. Because the moment you allow autocrats to dictate things, oligarchies to dictate things, we're living in an oligarchy now in America, it will only cause more distress. So for us who are in the non-dual world and we perceive things from the non-dual perspective, we still have to maintain our oneness, but that doesn't mean that we stay silent on these things. So contact your representatives, contact your senators to make sure that they maintain that fight against the convicted felon and his administration, that we do not allow them to harm others, because this is the one thing we can do. So make sure you do that. The other thing to do is to make sure you speak up about this. I'm using my platform to speak about this. I will continue to do so now and then, in between spiritual content, to speak about the issues that we face in America. But most of all, I want you to remember that whenever it gets going tough or you want to have clarity on this situation, just focus on awareness. Go back into your nature as true formless awareness, and then respond. See the bigger picture, see the vastness, and see what it's like from each perspective. Who benefits and who loses. And when you see it from this perspective, you see that common decency and humanity is losing at this point. At this point. So let's see. Remember, it's only going to probably get worse. This whole, since he's began, it's only got worse. The tariffs, it possibly will create a Trump session. So we'll probably see that. We have already experienced our first measles death because of anti-vax sentiments. So that's already happened. So the tariff issues come in. I think China, Mexico, and Canada have given their retaliation to that. So welcome to higher prices in the US. And then we also have the State of Division speech today. I'm not calling it State of the Union speech because there's not a union right now. It's a State of Division created by the greatest divider in chief, the convicted felon. So we'll see. Maybe tomorrow I'll also speak about that speech. But I just want people to know that where we could be on the brink of a world war because of the way things are playing out. But I'm hoping that Europe keeps its diplomacy, keeps defending Ukraine. I hope that good senses will prevail here in the US. But whatever happens, remember to respond to it. 1, to know the facts. 2, to remain in your true nature as formless awareness and see things from a vaster perspective, a very macro perspective, and then also see things from a very minute perspective where we see what it's like for each of the key players and how we benefit. See, as global citizens, we benefit from a world at peace. So any conflict is going to bring conflict to us eventually. So even on an individual level. So that's why to avoid conflict, we need good senses to prevail. And this only see the way people are reacting to this, who are really against Ukraine and who are defending the convicted felon. What they're doing is they're only seeing things from their body perspective. They're not seeing things from the spirit perspective, from the spiritual perspective. If you did from the spiritual perspective, you will not allow any of this. And there's no two ways about it. There's no negotiation here. You can't be for that. You can't be for something that can escalate into a world war. And to then say that the aggressor was fine, the aggressor is the victim, is the biggest U-turn I've ever seen. And I'll end on this. I saw a really cool kind of meme on Blue Sky, which was that Russia didn't surrender, Ukraine didn't surrender, but the US, the United States, has surrendered. And that's the facts. And we have to deal with that. And so, like I say, contact your representatives, contact your senators, make sure that they defend Ukraine, defend the righteous people of Ukraine. Even, there must be people in Russia who do not want this war either. They're in a war-torn economy right now. They really want America's support right now. But unfortunately, until they do something about Putin, America should keep a step away from Russia and ensure that Russia, if it wants, is going to do a ceasefire. And if they do a ceasefire, that they stick to the rules. And what we're seeing already with Israel and the Gaza conflict, that Biden was able to create a ceasefire in, that we've seen Israel already break that ceasefire agreement. So things aren't looking good. And unfortunately, the convicted felon is going to side with Bibi because that's who he loves. He loves these dictators. He loves these autocrats. because that's what he wants to be. He wants a third term, and we have to stand in the way of that. And that's the non-dual perspective. We believe in democracy, because for non-duality to prevail, we need peace, we need tranquility, we need people to live a prosperous life. That can only happen if people have their rights and their full freedom, and that cannot happen when we are going to go into a fascist state, which is where America is looking like it wants to go down, unless the people speak up, and I hope they will. So yes, take care, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode. Join my Discord if you want. But to the people of Ukraine, you have my support, and I will always support you. I don't support the convicted felon at all. And if anyone that does support the convicted felon and watches my podcast now wants to not watch my podcast and unsubscribe, I'm happy with that too. I'm really happy with that, because my support is really clear. And I hope the Democrats also grow a backbone, and let's put Sanders and AOC at the forefront. You know, that's your best strategy. Listen to me. That's your best strategy. Get someone who can get us really talking about the issues. But there's lots of things going on. But this one thing, this whole issue with the White House even stopping military aid going to Ukraine, is dangerous for the world. And I hope we understand that this is going to create negative effects, not positive. Okay, but with that note, may we all remain in our true nature as formless awareness as we deal with a democracy that is at breaking point in the United States. Take care, everybody. Namaste.